The strength that doesn't depend on motivation. Most men begin any journey full of energy. The first day is always strong, high motivation, enthusiasm at its peak, a feeling that nothing will be able to stop them. But as time passes, as the routine weighs down, as the first difficulty appears, that initial flame begins to fade. The fire of motivation alone doesn't last. That's why so many start and few continue. And here's the question you need to answer. What is the secret of those who remain steadfast even when the enthusiasm is gone? Why do some give up after a few days while others go through months, years, maintaining the same discipline? The difference isn't in who has more initial energy, but in who learns to build strength that doesn't depend on motivation. In this video, I'm going to reveal how to transform discipline into something lasting. We'll start by exposing the mistake of relying only on motivation, that short flame that warms up quickly but doesn't sustain anyone. Then we'll understand what discipline really means, not blind rigidity, but conscious repetition, brick upon brick, until walls are erected. After that, we'll delve into the neuroscience of repetition, showing how each no to addiction reprograms your brain and strengthens the circuits of self-control. We'll also talk about small daily victories, because discipline isn't born from grandiose gestures, but from simple choices like getting up early, making the bed, resisting small impulses. We'll see how even an apparent detail can become the root of a great victory. But we can't ignore the danger of broken discipline, the crack in the wall that makes the fortress more vulnerable. To make this even more vivid, I'll bring historical examples of warriors, monks, and elite athletes who lived discipline as a ritual, not as chance. Because history has always shown that consistency was the greatest weapon of the winners. Then, we'll learn how to create practical discipline, structured routine, clear goals, fixed rituals. You'll realize that discipline doesn't require infinite willpower. It requires a system, and a system reduces mental effort. We'll also talk about identity, because discipline only becomes lasting when you change who you believe you are. You need to stop thinking, "I'm trying to stop," and start affirming, "I am someone who doesn't bow to addiction." This change of identity is what transforms effort into nature. Along the way, I'll bring you applied Stoic philosophy, showing that consistency is worth more than intensity, and that daily discipline is a greater virtue than any momentary pleasure. You'll understand the cycle of discipline that renews itself, because the more you practice, the easier it becomes. Discipline doesn't spend energy, it multiplies it. And in the end, we'll arrive at the revealed secret. Discipline isn't a gift, it's not talent, it's not the privilege of a few. Discipline is a repeated choice, every day, until it becomes who you are. But before continuing, I need you to be part of this movement. Subscribe to the channel now. Each episode is another weapon against addiction, another reminder that you're not alone, another piece of armor for your daily struggle. Without this routine of following, you become vulnerable. With it, you strengthen your march. And I want to leave you with a provocation to reflect on right now. How many times have you started something with full force, but couldn't sustain it because you relied only on motivation? How many times have you given up not because you were weak, but because you didn't have real discipline? Think about it, because the answer to these questions will prepare your heart for what's to come. The mistake of relying only on motivation. Many men believe that the secret of discipline is to keep motivation always high. They think, if I'm excited, I'll resist. If I feel inspired, I'll win. But this logic is as fragile as glass, because motivation is a flash in the pan. It heats up quickly, shines brightly for a few moments, and soon after disappears, leaving only ashes. That's why so many start with energy and stop halfway. In the first few days, everything seems possible. Excitement is like a favorable wind that pushes the boat forward. But when the wind changes, when fatigue comes, when the routine tightens, when temptation presents itself insistently, the boat drifts. Without discipline, the sailor doesn't know how to row alone. Motivation is important, but it has never been enough. Because it depends on external factors, a video that inspires, a striking phrase, a song that cheers you up. But what if you wake up tired? What if life offers no stimulus? What if the mind feels as heavy as lead? If your strength depends only on motivation? On those days, you'll be lost. This is precisely what explains why so many people give up. It's not a lack of desire. Everyone wants to change. But the mistake is in believing that the initial desire will be enough to sustain months of battle. It won't be. Whoever relies only on motivation is doomed to repeat cycles, starts excited, stumbles, gives up, blames themselves, waits for a new wave of energy, and starts all over again. It's a vicious circle that never leads to victory. Think of the gym. How many enter in January full of energy and abandon in February? Their body didn't fail. The capacity didn't disappear. What was missing was real discipline, the strength to continue even when the excitement was gone. The same goes for the fight against pornography. The man starts enthusiastically, promises changes, makes plans. But in the first difficult week, when motivation drops, he gives in. Because he hasn't learned to walk without crutches. Motivation is like a match. It can light the flame, but it can't keep it going. To keep the fire burning, you need wood, routine, repetition, consistency. That's the difference between those who last and those who give up. Therefore, the mistake isn't in feeling motivated. We all need that initial impulse. The mistake is in believing that this will be enough. The real secret is to use motivation only as a starting point, not as the main engine. The engine needs to be discipline, that cold and firm decision to continue even without the will, to resist even without encouragement, to act even without emotion. And I want you to reflect now. How many times have you started a change confidently, but given up as soon as the motivation was gone? How many projects, how many attempts, how many promises died because you expected to feel all the time what only lasts at the beginning? If the answer is many, you already know the truth. Motivation without discipline is a condemnation to repetition. What discipline really is. Many people confuse discipline with blind rigidity. They think that discipline is living like a robot, without pleasure, without rest, without freedom. But that's not discipline, that's prison. True discipline is conscious choice. It's the ability to repeat daily the actions that bring you closer to what you want, even when there's no motivation, even when the will is lacking, even when the mind invents excuses. Discipline is building brick by brick, day after day, until you erect solid walls that protect you from the enemy. It doesn't matter if a brick is small or large. What matters is that it's placed in the right place, at the right time, every day. That's how a wall is born. Not with a single explosive effort, but with consistency. That's why disciplined men seem to have a special strength. It's not that they never feel temptation. It's not that they never feel lazy. It's that they've learned not to depend on fleeting emotions to act. They've transformed choices into habits, habits into routines, routines into identity. Discipline also doesn't mean inflexible hardness. A disciplined man knows how to adapt. If something fails, he doesn't abandon the entire wall. He fixes the crack, replaces the brick, adjusts the course. Rigidity breaks under pressure. True discipline bends when it needs to, but never breaks. The problem is that most still see discipline as punishment. They think, if I'm disciplined, I'll lose freedom. When in fact it's the opposite. Indiscipline is what steals freedom, because it makes you a slave to impulses. Discipline liberates, because it puts you in control. Every time you act in a disciplined way, you're saying to the addiction, you don't control me. And here's the metaphor that should guide your mind. Imagine a wall being built in front of you. Every time you resist an impulse, you place a brick. Every time you say no to addiction, another brick. Every time you choose routine instead of laziness, another brick. It may seem little today, but tomorrow when you look back, you'll see that you've already erected a fortress. That's discipline, an invisible wall that becomes visible over time. In the beginning, you don't feel it. In the beginning, it seems like effort without reward. But one day, when temptation strikes, you'll find a wall so solid that you won't even notice the impact. That's the power of silent discipline. And now I want you to reflect. Have you been placing bricks every day? Or do you expect to build walls only with explosions of motivation? The answer shows whether you're really free or just postponing the inevitable. The neuroscience of repetition. The human brain is a habit machine. It was designed to save energy, automate processes, and transform repetition into a fixed path. Therefore, every action you repeat doesn't just stay on the surface. It carves trails inside your mind, like rivers that dig valleys in the earth. The more times the water passes through the same place, the deeper the bed becomes. The same happens with your behaviors. Each repeated choice deepens the neural pathway through which your life will flow. When you give in to pornography, that act isn't restricted to the moment. It reinforces a circuit, strengthens connections, engraves in the brain the message, "This is pleasure. This is the easy way." That's why relapse seems so automatic. You think you're making a free decision, but in reality you're traveling a road already paved by repetition. But the good news is that the process works in the opposite direction as well. Every time you resist, every time you say no, you're opening a new trail. In the beginning, this trail is fragile, almost invisible, difficult to travel. But the more you walk on it, the clearer it becomes, the wider, the easier. Until one day, what was once effort becomes a reflex. Neuroscientists call this brain plasticity. It's the brain's ability to change, to reshape itself, to create new pathways. This means that you're never condemned to addiction. It doesn't matter how many years you've been traveling this road, there's always the possibility of opening a new path. But this requires repetition. It's not isolated willpower, it's not fleeting motivation, it's the constant, repeated choice to resist. Each no to addiction is like weight training. You don't see results on the first day nor on the second, but over time the muscle grows. The same happens with self-control. In the beginning it's heavy, it seems useless, it seems like nothing has changed. But each repetition strengthens the invisible muscle of discipline, and here comes something even more powerful. The brain releases dopamine not only when you give in, but also when you fulfill consistent habits. This means that with repetition, you can teach your brain to feel pleasure in resisting, to feel satisfaction in saying no, to be proud of each victory. Pleasure changes address. It stops being in slavery and starts living in freedom. Discipline, therefore, isn't punishment. It's neural reprogramming. It's science applied to your life. Each repetition builds your future, and the more you repeat, the more automatic it becomes. And now I want you to think, how many times have you already reinforced the path of relapse? And how many times could you have chosen to reinforce the path of freedom? That's the key. Don't expect change without repetition. Don't expect victory without training. The brain only understands one language: constant practice. Small daily victories. Many men believe that discipline is built only in great moments, in heroic decisions, in epic battles against enormous temptations. But the truth is that discipline isn't born from the extraordinary. It's born from the ordinary. It's not the giant gestures that define your future, but the small daily victories that you conquer when no one is watching. Getting out of bed at the time you said you would. Cleaning the room even when it seems unnecessary. Saying no to a small distraction when you should be focusing. Choosing a glass of water instead of soda. These choices seem ridiculous, insignificant, but it's in them that the muscle of discipline grows. Because each small victory is a message sent to your brain. I control myself, not my impulses. Pornography feeds precisely on the opposite, the repetition of small concessions. Just today. Just a little. Just to relax. It's in these seemingly small moments that the wall begins to crack. In the same way, it's in the seemingly small moments that you can reinforce it. Every time you resist a minimal impulse, you strengthen the invisible muscle that will sustain your resistance in the bigger moments. Think of a Spartan warrior. He didn't train only on the day of the war. He trained every day, in every gesture, in every bodily discipline, in every choice. It was this constant, seemingly banal training that made him unbreakable when the real battle arrived. You also need to face your life like this. Each small victory is training for the great victory. And here's a secret. The human mind loves consistency. When you win at something small, you feel confident to face something bigger. This effect is cumulative. Whoever makes the bed feels more energy to train. Whoever trains feels more energy to work. Whoever works with focus feels more confidence to say no to temptation. Small victories form a chain that drags you forward. Therefore, never despise the details. Addiction takes advantage of the contempt for details. It doesn't appear only in the obvious moments, but also when you ignore the basic routines that sustain your strength. And on the contrary, freedom flourishes precisely when you cultivate simple and constant habits. And now I want you to reflect. What small victories can you conquer today? Maybe turning off your cell phone half an hour before bed. Maybe going for a walk instead of being trapped in the room. Maybe organizing your workspace. These are simple choices, but each one is a brick placed on the wall of discipline. Remember, discipline isn't born from the moments when you fight against the entire army, but from the moments when you train alone, in the shadow, winning the minimal battles. Because when the war really comes, it will be these accumulated small victories that will keep you standing. The danger of broken discipline. Discipline is like a wall erected brick by brick. It protects, gives security, keeps the enemy outside. But just as a wall doesn't fall suddenly, it also isn't destroyed by just one big impact. What weakens it are the ignored cracks, the holes left unattended, the small details that seem irrelevant. And it's the same with discipline. It's not just the big fall that threatens it, but the repeated small concessions. When you give up a habit that seemed simple, when you stop fulfilling a routine that seemed banal, you don't feel the effect right away. But slowly, almost without realizing it, the wall becomes vulnerable. Broken discipline doesn't show its face immediately. It works in silence, corroding the fortress from within. And one day when the attack comes, when temptation presents itself with full force, the defense collapses because the cracks were already there, ignored. That's why consistency matters. It's not about being perfect. It's about not allowing failures to multiply uncontrollably. An isolated failure doesn't destroy your trajectory, but constant negligence does. The problem isn't in stumbling, but in transforming the stumble into a lifestyle. When you start accepting that it's okay to always relax, you teach the brain that it doesn't need to stay firm, and when you need it most, it won't have the strength. Imagine a medieval castle. If a loose stone is repaired immediately, the wall remains firm. But if the cracks multiply, if the repair is postponed, if the surveillance is abandoned, a medium impact is enough to bring everything down. That's how your discipline is. Either you take care of the cracks while they're small, or you'll pay the price of seeing the entire structure crumble. And there's something even more dangerous. Self-sabotage disguised as rest. How many men say to themselves, "I deserve a break, I deserve relaxation, I don't need to be rigid every day." It's in this seemingly innocent thought that addiction finds space. Don't confuse rest with carelessness. Rest strengthens discipline. Carelessness destroys it. Broken discipline also has a devastating psychological effect. Every time you tell yourself that you're going to do something and don't fulfill it, you lose confidence in your own word. And if you don't believe in yourself, how will you resist when temptation comes? External discipline is always born from internal confidence. Without it, any wind knocks you down. Therefore, keep this truth. One failure doesn't destroy everything, but constant negligence does. The secret isn't to never fall, but to never accept that the cracks become inverted walls. Whenever you notice a failure, correct it quickly. Don't let the small become the ruin of the big. And now reflect with me. Where are the cracks in your wall today? What small concessions have you been calling no big deal, but that are already weakening your fortress? Identify them, because it's better to repair today than to cry tomorrow. Historical examples. If there's proof that discipline is the key to any victory, just look at history. No great people, no legendary warrior, no elite athlete built their strength solely on moments of motivation. They all had rituals, routines, consistency. They didn't wait to feel like it. They did it because it was necessary. Think of the Spartans. From childhood, they were subjected to the awakens, a rigorous training that shaped body and mind. There was no room for laziness nor for excuses. The young Spartan learned early that life was not sustained by fleeting feelings, but by repeated discipline. Every morning, every workout, every meal was regulated. When the time for war came, they didn't need motivational speeches. Discipline was already etched into their bones. Now look at the warrior monks. It doesn't matter if we're talking about the Shaolins in the East or the Christian monks who lived in silence and prayer. They understood that an undisciplined mind is fertile ground for destruction. Their days were structured, fixed times for meditation, prayer, study, combat. Nothing was left loose because they knew that the void would be filled by temptations. Even in modern sports, the lesson is repeated. Olympic athletes don't train only when they are motivated. They train on days of fatigue, pain, boredom. They wake up before the sun, repeat the same movement thousands of times because they know that discipline generates excellence. When the competition arrives, it's not talent that sustains them. It's discipline accumulated over years of repetition. And here's the point. There's no difference between them and you. The addiction you face may not be a battle on an open field. It may not be a race in front of thousands of people, but it's war all the same. And like every war, it will only be won with discipline. It doesn't matter if your routine seems simple. What matters is that it's consistent. Discipline is not exclusive to ancient warriors or famous athletes. It's accessible to any man who decides to transform his life into a ritual. Waking up at the same time, having set schedules, creating habits that are repeated, that's what builds walls against addiction. And don't underestimate the strength of that. Just as a soldier knows that every training counts, you need to know that every repetition of daily discipline is forging the man you want to become. And now I want you to think, who are the historical examples that inspire you the most? What did they have in common? You'll realize that it wasn't just courage, nor just strength, but discipline. And if they managed to build empires and withstand wars, you can also resist the invisible war you wage against yourself. How to create practical discipline. Talking about discipline can sound abstract, as if it were a distant virtue, reserved only for warriors or monks. But the discipline that transforms lives is not born in the air. It needs to be practiced concretely, on the ground of routine. Creating practical discipline is what differentiates those who only dream from those who actually build. The first step is to establish a structured routine. The human brain loves predictability. When you wake up at the same time, fulfill basic rituals, and follow a stable sequence of actions, you reduce the weight of choices. This is powerful because each decision consumes mental energy. If you leave everything to improvisation, you spend strength even before facing temptation. But when the routine is clear, the path is automatic, and there's energy left to resist what matters. Clear goals are also essential. It's no use saying I'm going to be disciplined without defining how this manifests itself in everyday life. You need specific objectives. Get up at 6 in the morning, train 5 times a week, study for an hour a day, reduce time on your cell phone. The more concrete, the harder it is for the mind to find loopholes to escape. Fixed rituals are another powerful weapon. Think of the monks who have sacred times for prayer, or the soldiers who always train in the same cycle. These rituals create a sense of solidity, almost like anchors in time. If you define, for example, that every day at night you will write 3 lines about how you resisted the addiction, in a short time, this ceases to be effort and becomes a natural part of who you are. Another aspect of practical discipline is reducing the need for willpower. Many believe they need to be strong all the time, but no one can fight against every impulse forever. The secret is to simplify. Take the cell phone out of the room, install blockers, prepare the workout clothes the night before, leave the water bottle in sight. Each adjustment eliminates a decision, and each decision less is energy saved for bigger battles. And remember, practical discipline is not about doing a lot at once, but about creating systems that work even on bad days, because everyone has bad days. What differentiates the winner is that, even tired, he follows the system. That's what guarantees consistency. Now reflect. How is your routine today? What rituals could be added to strengthen your discipline? What loopholes are letting the enemy in? Don't expect miraculous motivation. Build practical, visible, applied discipline, because it's what will sustain your fight when the will disappears. The role of identity. No habit lasts if it's not anchored in identity. You can even resist for a few weeks just with effort, But if inside you still believe that you are an addict trying to stop, sooner or later, the mind will pull you back into the cycle. Because our actions always seek to align with who we believe we are. This is where many fail. They fight against pornography as if wearing a temporary mask. On the outside, they try to show discipline. On the inside, they continue to see themselves as slaves to desire. And when temptation strikes, identity speaks louder. You've always been like this, there's no point in trying to change. It's like swimming against the current without ever leaving the shore. Lasting discipline is only born when identity is transformed. When you start saying, I'm not someone trying to stop, I'm someone who doesn't bow to addiction. This change seems merely semantic, but it's revolutionary. Because the brain doesn't accept contradiction for long. If you define yourself as a free man, your actions need to accompany that definition. The mind works to align behavior and identity. Think of the ancient warriors. The Spartan didn't see himself as a civilian trying to be a warrior. He saw himself as a warrior from birth. The monk didn't see himself as someone trying to live in discipline. He was discipline. This fusion between identity and practice made it impossible to separate what they did from what they were. And you need to get to that point. Stop seeing yourself as someone in attempt and start seeing yourself as someone who already is. Identity is also the silent answer to temptations. When the mind suggests, just watch one more time, the man who still sees himself as weak needs to fight against the will. But the man who sees himself as free simply replies, that's not part of who I am. This clarity cuts the cycle at the root. And this is where many stumble, because they still carry old labels. Perhaps they grew up hearing that they were undisciplined, lazy, weak. Perhaps they have failed so many times that they started to believe it. But labels are not sentences. Identity can be rewritten. Every decision you make is a brick in the construction of who you are. And now I want to provoke you. Who do you believe you are? Do you still see yourself as a prisoner trying to escape, or have you already assumed the identity of a free man who doesn't bow? This answer changes everything. Because true discipline is not just what you do, it's who you are. We've reached a point where reflection needs to leave only my voice and enter your practical life. Because until now, we've talked about the mistake of relying only on motivation, about what discipline really is, about the neuroscience of repetition, about small victories, and even about the identity you carry. But none of this will have strength if it stays only at the listening level. You need to put into words what you are determined to live. Therefore, I want you to write in the comments, what simple habit can you repeat every day to strengthen your discipline? It can be something small. Maybe it's making your bed every morning, as we talked about. Maybe it's walking 15 minutes a day. Maybe it's writing in a notebook before bed. Maybe it's turning off your cell phone half an hour before lying down. It doesn't matter the size of the habit. What matters is the repetition. What matters is that you choose something and commit to it. And here's the reason. When you publicly declare the habit you will repeat, you transform an idea into commitment. The brain understands that now it's not just a thought but a pact, and when others read, this pact gains even more weight. You become part of an invisible current of men who are fighting for the same cause. The Stoics already practiced this exercise of internal commitment. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his diaries not only to record thoughts, but to reinforce to himself who he wanted to be. You can do the same here, but with a difference. Your word will be read by other warriors, and this sharing creates collective responsibility. Maybe you think it's insignificant to write a comment, but it's not. Every time someone reads what you wrote, they can be inspired. Maybe a man in decline will read your simple habit and think, if he managed to choose that, I can too. You have no idea of the reach your courage can have. So I repeat, what simple habit can you repeat every day to strengthen your discipline? Choose one. Write. Mark that commitment. Because discipline is not theory, it's practice. And it starts today, it starts now, it starts in the detail that you decide to transform into ritual. Applied Stoic philosophy. The Stoics always taught something that seems simple, but that challenges any modern man. Consistency is greater than intensity. It's no use living moments of heroic effort if, soon after, you abandon the practice. The true power is in staying firm every day, even on the most common, even on the most grey, even when nothing inspires. Seneca warned that fleeting pleasure is a trap, and that virtue only flourishes in those who remain. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, "Stop distracting yourself, stop wandering, focus on what needs to be done." These words, written almost 2,000 years ago, sound as if they were said today to you who fight against addiction. Because pornography is exactly that. Distraction, escape, immediate pleasure that corrodes your strength to remain constant. Daily discipline, in the Stoic view, is not just a habit, it's virtue. It's not just a routine, it's a spiritual exercise. Every time you resist, you are practicing justice with yourself because you refuse to betray your own dignity. You are practicing courage because you face a powerful temptation head-on. You are practicing temperance because you don't allow desire to govern your life. And notice, at no point did the Stoics talk about perfection. They didn't expect to never fail. They expected, yes, to never give up. They knew that the human being is vulnerable, but they also knew that it's this vulnerability that gives meaning to discipline. What makes victory great is the fact that it's not easy. When you choose to live this philosophy, every simple act of consistency becomes great. It's not just waking up early. It's waking up early because you are training your soul. It's not just saying no to addiction. It's saying no because you value your freedom more than a cheap pleasure. It's not just following a ritual. It's transforming that ritual into virtue. And now I want you to reflect. How many times have you sought intensity, great efforts, but let consistency slip away? How many times have you believed that you needed something spectacular when in reality all you needed was daily repetition? If you understood that, you understood the heart of Stoic philosophy applied to discipline, the cycle of self-renewing discipline. There's a secret that few realize. Discipline doesn't spend energy, it multiplies it. At first glance it seems the opposite, because being disciplined requires effort, requires saying no when everything inside you screams yes. But what happens is that each act of discipline creates internal reserves that are renewed with each repetition. The more you practice, the easier it becomes to continue practicing. Addiction works like a bottomless pit. The more you feed it, the emptier you feel. Discipline, on the other hand, works like a fountain. The closer you get to it, the more it gushes. What seemed heavy becomes light. What seemed difficult becomes natural. It's like training a muscle. In the beginning it hurts, but then it becomes pleasurable to see the strength increase. Discipline creates a virtuous cycle. You resist one day, feel proud, and that pride generates energy to resist the next day. This accumulation builds confidence, and confidence generates consistency. With each repetition, the brain records a new message. This is who I am. Little by little, you stop fighting against temptation as if it were an external battle and start living as someone who simply doesn't give in. And the most fascinating thing is that discipline is not limited to one area. When you strengthen yourself in one point, you automatically create reflexes in others. The man who learns to say no to pornography discovers that he can also say no to excessive food, laziness, wasting time. The energy that is born from discipline in one field spreads like electric current to the others. That's why disciplined men seem to have a different aura. They are not only resistant to addiction, they are consistent in everything. They build solid careers, firm relationships, balanced health. Because discipline is a multiplier, a seed planted that becomes a tree with many fruits. And this cycle has another advantage. It's self-sustaining. In the beginning, it requires conscious effort, but over time, it becomes a habit. The habit becomes routine. The routine becomes identity. And when you get to that point, you no longer need to fight so much, because what was once effort has become nature. Now I want to provoke you to think, in which areas of your life has discipline already begun to renew itself? And in which areas are you still spending energy because you haven't let the cycle take hold? This analysis can be the map that is missing to accelerate your journey. If there's a truth that you need to carry like a tattoo on your soul, it's this. Discipline is not a moment, it's a lifestyle. It's not something you do only when you are excited, nor something you practice only in periods of enthusiasm. True discipline is consistency. It's deciding that Come what may, you will continue to put bricks in the wall of your freedom. Many men still believe that they will overcome pornography only with explosions of effort, as if they were able to take a leap so high that they would never need to walk again. But what really builds victory is not leaps, it's steps. Small, repeated, constant. Consistency wins where intensity fails. Consistency is continuing even in boredom. It's maintaining the routine even when nothing seems to happen. It's waking up on time even without grandiose reasons. It's saying no to temptation on the ordinary day, in silence without applause. Lasting discipline is not born in epic moments, but in the seemingly insignificant everyday life. The great winners in history knew this. Warriors trained daily, even in times of peace. Monks prayed every day, even when they didn't feel fervor. Athletes practiced the same movements for years until they become perfect. Their secret was not in doing a lot at once, but in never stopping doing. And here's something you need to record. Consistency transforms the ordinary man into extraordinary. Not because he is more talented, but because he was more persistent. Talent may even open doors, but only consistency keeps you inside them. Therefore, I want you to look at yourself and answer. Have you lived on explosions or on consistency? Have you relied on moments of strength but abandoned in weak days? Or have you learned to continue even when there seems to be no reason? That's the difference between a slave and a free man. Consistency is what makes discipline stop being weight and become nature. In the beginning, it's effort, then it's identity. And when discipline becomes part of who you are, freedom ceases to be a distant dream and becomes your daily reality. The secret revealed. Most men spend their lives believing that discipline is a gift, a present reserved for a few. They look at warriors, monks, athletes and think, they were born like that, I wasn't. And so they shrink before their own weakness, convinced that they were not chosen for consistency. But the truth that can free you today, is that discipline has never been a gift. Discipline has always been a choice repeated until it becomes nature. The secret revealed is simple but profound. You don't need to wait to feel like it, nor depend on fleeting motivation. You just need to choose every day to continue. You need to say no when everything inside you screams yes. You need to keep the step firm even when your legs hurt. You need to put brick upon brick until the wall is standing. And the more you practice, the more this discipline is renewed. It doesn't wear out, it multiplies. Each victory, however small it may seem, generates energy for the next. Each repetition strengthens the invisible muscle that sustains your freedom, until one day you look back and realize you no longer fight only against an addiction. You have become someone different. You are another man. That's the beauty of discipline. It starts as effort but ends as identity. In the beginning, you force yourself to resist. Then you simply don't bow. In the beginning, each step seems heavy. Then, walking becomes light. The secret is in consistency, not in the great moments, not in the fiery speeches, not in the explosions of strength, but in the simple act of continuing. And here, I want to speak directly to you. Don't expect perfection. Don't expect to feel infinite energy. Just choose. Choose today, choose tomorrow, choose always. Because each choice you make is a brick placed in the wall that separates slavery from freedom. Now, I need you to commit for real. Subscribe to this channel now. Don't postpone. Each episode of this series is a piece of your armor. Without it, you go to war unarmed. With it, you carry sword and shield in each day of your walk. And leave in the comments the word Day 21. Write in capital letters, like a battle cry. This word is not just a number. It's proof that you are marching, that you haven't given up, that you are building discipline day after day. Never forget, discipline is not a gift. It's the choice repeated until it becomes who you are. And that was the video I prepared for you. But the war doesn't end here. The next episode is already appearing on your screen now. Click and continue marching with me, because each day lived with discipline is one more step towards the freedom you were born to conquer.